Hello and welcome to the joint meeting of the GenGov Town Council for Wednesday, April 21st. It's a little after 6:30 because the last meeting ran over. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of General Government Town Council is being conducted via hybrid remote participation only. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted in the council chambers, and every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who wish to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching Southbridge Cable Access Channel 192, or YouTube probably, or by the remote information noted below. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. A roll call vote is required for all votes taken under this order. And the first agenda item is roll call. Councilor Marchetti?
Present.
Ms. Shea?
Present.
Councilor Ryan?
Present.
By remote, just for the record, for everybody here. Ms. Clements?
Present.
And I am present. So we are all here. Excellent. Item number 2 is consider and accept GenGov subcommittee minutes of March 24th. I think I emailed them out. They should be I think they're in the packet.
I didn't receive any.
Been on the packet.
You didn't see them? I think I emailed them. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I forgot to email them.
I don't remember.
I know they're done. I think I may have forgotten to email out, but I know they're done. I'll put them into the next packet. Sorry about that. Item number 3 is discuss a cable studio transfer request from miscellaneous materials to the telephone account in the amount of $300 for unexpected repair call for the cable phone system. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, a motion from Councilor Clements.
Second.
Ms. Clements? Ms. Shea, thank you. Okay. Any comments or questions? Is this something you want to, is this, you're on for this there, Max?
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. We had an unexpected repair of our phone. We lost service on it, and we're on our own system here. So we called in a technician.
Okay.
And this is enough extra money to get us through to the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Just curious, anybody, any idea what caused it?
Sir?
Was there any idea what caused it? Do you know what caused it?
The cost of the repair?
No, what caused the problem?
What was the cause of the
Oh, we had the guy came from Verizon. He came out and checked all the external stuff, and he narrowed it down to it's our phone. So yeah, we found the cause. He did that for us. It was something relatively simple, but nonetheless, he charged us to come out. He charged us a little less than $300. But,
Okay.
any money goes back to, any extra money will go back to our budget. So.
All right. Okay. Any further comments or questions? Anything from you, Councilor Ryan? No? Okay. All those in favor? Councilor Marchetti?
Yes.
Ms. Shea?
Yes.
Ms. Clemens?
Yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. Okay. Item number 4. Discuss and review the town manager's request from the landfill royalties account to the special appropriation landfill legal costs account in the amounts of $5,000 to cover the cost of landfill legal invoices. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, thank you. First from Councilor Ryan, second from Ms. Clements. Mr. McCall?
Yes, Ms. Arnold is not with us this evening. This is the only issue that
She is online.
might be commenting on, but I can handle it. We have occasional bills that trickle in relative to the landfill matter. We had, I think, $1,700 last month. We have an ongoing issue or two that we're still working with Myrick O'Connell, and we anticipate, based on a couple of phone calls due to some paperwork, that we'll get similar bill in the next month or two. So figured rather than come each month for approximately $1,500 to $2,000, we would ask for this, and it should cover the work that we believe has been done to date and would be necessary probably to finish this last remaining matter up.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Councilor Marchetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Were we supposed to receive some refunds on legal bills, legal costs,
So
reimbursements?
through you, Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that there is a an insurance policy that when we get some of these bills, we submit them. I can't think of the name of the carrier, but they are refunding us for some, if not all, of those legal bills, and that's handled by Ms. Ryan in my office, and I'm sure I could get you some type of status on that.
Right.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know we do submit those.
Yeah, I know in the past we have. Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions? Is there anything you'd like to add, Karen? I can see that you're on the online here. Thought I saw you a second ago.
I didn't think she was joining in.
Yes, I just wanted to say that we have been receiving the reimbursements from the insurance for the legal bills that we
Okay.
have incurred in the past.
Okay, what's a rough time frame for those kinds of reimbursement turnarounds? Like every quarter or something?
I think, I'm thinking that she submits them every quarter, and I think they're pretty prompt in getting back to us.
Okay,
Well, if I could just ask one
Go ahead.
more quick question.
Go ahead.
When I got the local receipts, through you, Mr. Chairman, when I got the local receipts, I didn't see any of the legal reimbursements on there, unless it's just the wrong, or maybe they haven't come in yet. That's why I was asking, I just haven't seen any.
We could probably defer to Ms. Harnois, but my guess, I'll take a stab at that. Local receipts, those are typically, monies we get in, which we treat as revenue. I would imagine that this is some type of an accounting measure where we're being reimbursed, but if she can shed any more light, I would defer to her.
Okay,
Karen?
thank you.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. The landfill royalties is where we transfer the money out of, so when the money comes back in, it replenishes the landfill royalty fund. That's why you don't see it in the local receipts.
Okay. So the money comes back and goes back straight back to landfill royalties? It doesn't go through the general fund?
Accounting.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any further comments or questions? Okay. All those in favor, Councilor Marchetti?
Yes.
Ms. Shea?
Yes.
Ms. Clements?
Yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. Okay. Item number 5. Discuss the Community Center Director's transfer request from the Town Council Reserve to the Electricity Community Center account in the amount of $48.19 to pay a prior year's bill that was missed in transition to the new Community Center Director. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, so Councilor Clements, and I thought I heard Councilor Ryan, or Ms. Clements and Councilor Ryan. Okay. Pat, are you up there? Or is this something you know?
I'm here, yes. So I was going back through some bills when I was researching the comparison for the heat and electric costs from this year to last year. And I noticed a discrepancy, and I couldn't find the bill. So I called National Grid, and they managed to track it down for me. And it was from last March during the transition. And it must have just got mixed between Mike and myself during my training period. It was for $48.19, so that's why we're asking for the transfer to cover that cost.
Okay. Anybody have comments or questions? Jack?
My only question, and through you to Karen, would this require a 2/3 vote because it's a prior year's balance and it's coming from council reserve?
Probably.
Or not? I just, as an accounting thing, I don't know if Karen's still on or not.
Karen?
Yes, I am. It will require a 2/3 vote when we send it to town council.
Okay, thank you.
But it doesn't require it now.
No, I just want to make
No.
sure, I just wanted to make sure when I review the agenda that it does require a
Right.
2/3 vote. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I have to ask, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Pat, didn't you continually see the 4819 on the bills? I mean, usually if you continually miss something.
I did see a carryover, and I've asked numerous times, from Karen and whoever, where would that come from, and we just never found it. I don't know why.
Okay, well, I guess lesson learned, so before budget, before the fiscal year ends, just always clear up those carryover, or at least
Right.
inquire enough to so we don't have to deal with a two-thirds vote.
Yeah, I
or-
don't
Yeah.
know when it started showing up, though, truly. Yeah,
Okay,
I did learn. Thank you.
Okay.
okay.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, and all those in favor, Councilor Clements, or Ms. Clements?
Yes.
Councilor Marquetti?
Yes.
Ms. Shea?
Yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. Okay. Let's see here. Item number, where are we, 6? Yeah, okay. Item number 6, discuss the Community Center Director's transfer request from Town Council Reserve to Electricity Community Center in the amount of $2,000 to cover a deficit in the budget due to COVID vaccination clinic additional usage. Okay, can I have a motion, please? What was that again? Was that a so moved from Councilor Ryan?
In a second.
In a second, okay, thank you. Okay. do you have anything you would like to say about that, Mr. McCall, or should this go through Pat?
Well, we can talk to Ms. Haddock about it, but I have asked her to track all of these COVID-related expenses as we will be able to submit these for reimbursement, so.
Okay.
we
Okay,
have to
Pat?
cover them in the interim.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just because we're using so much more electricity than we have in the past, our budget just is not going to support it for the rest of the fiscal year. So, and speaking with Karen, she suggested that we do a transfer to cover that budget deficit.
Okay.
And we came up with a $2,000 figure, estimating that's about what we're running right now.
Okay. I do have a quick question before I pass it on. Is this going forward, is this electricity cost going to be covered in the rent that we're dealing with, that we have? I don't think council has approved it yet, but I know it's coming to council for Harrington's rent. That's not going to be included in the rent?
So, to you, Mr. Chairman, no. And under normal circumstances, a rent agreement like that, we would have argued for that, but one of the things we talked about when I met with Harrington, I brought that up, but I also realized that we could get some reimbursement for the utilities. So given the nature of the agreement, they're partnering with us. I didn't push the point knowing that what good would it do to get it from them versus get it from the reimbursements that we could get, so.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Marquetti.
So you, through you, Mr. Chairman, so to the town manager, so you're convinced that we will get this reimbursed?
That is my understanding, and I think you can get that as well from Ms. Harnoy's. At one point, there was 75% reimbursement, and I believe that since President Biden took over and adjusted some things, I believe that these will now qualify, and Ms. Harnoy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we will now be eligible for 100% reimbursement for some of these COVID-related expenses.
Okay.
Is that correct, Karen?
Karen?
Yes, that is correct. I'm just not sure. We did have a discussion with FEMA, and I'm not sure if they'll let us have both the rent and the utilities. So that'll have to be something that we follow up to see. Either get it through the rent or also an additional utilities.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Do you have anything, Councilor Ryan? No, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, but this $2,000, that's not on a month, that's based on how many months? How much time frame are you
For
thinking?
the next 3 months, for the rest of the fiscal year.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's 3 months worth, so.
Okay. Okay. Okay, all those in favor? Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Clements?
Yes.
Councilor Marquetti?
Yes.
Ms. Shea?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 7, discuss and review a request from the Treasurer Collector to enter into compensating balance agreements during fiscal year 2021 as permitted by Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion from Ms. Clements, second from Councilor Ryan. Melissa, thank you.
So what I'm requesting here is specific to a couple proposals that I have, that you should have in your packet for processing, which is what I'm trying to attempt to do. So I got 2 quotes to do a lockbox, which I also wanted to tell the council about, which is another reason that I'm doing it this way. And that would be a service to help, especially during the spring season when we have a lot of bills coming in at the same time and the tax office gets backed up and then people call in and say, why haven't you cashed my check? This would be an outside service that would process our banking for us, deposit our mail nightly, and then send us a file to post and reconcile any discrepancies every day versus the backlog that we have been experiencing since I've been here. Neither one of those services have a direct fee. The way that the proposals are generally given from the banks are based on balances that we maintain in banks anyway. So a compensating balance would say that that money is unavailable. So these are not true compensating balances, but they're similar enough that I felt it was important to discuss it with the council. So the bank gives us earnings credits based on the amount of money we have deposited in the bank. That credit is calculated monthly against the cost of the services that they're providing, and then we're reported back to on a monthly basis on whether we've met our obligations on deposits or lost it. So there's no hard cost dollars to spend here, but we are not receiving interest on that money where they're offsetting their cost of doing business by not turning the earnings. One of these proposals in particular I like because the earnings credit is 0.4, which sounds horrible, but is really good these days and significantly better than we're getting on our money anyway, so I thought it was a good investment. So if anyone else has any questions, but I just wanted to sort of explain the process. There's no dollars to be spent, but it is a change in the way that we do business, which I'm sure the council will hear about, and if you have opinions about that, better that we discuss them now. And then secondly, there's this legislation that allows for true compensating balances, which that would mean the funds are not available. Both of these proposals, we could draw those accounts to zero if we needed if we had a cash flow issue. They just want to know that over the course of the year that we'll maintain an average balance that they will be made whole. And that's why they give us the reporting, usually monthly, but sometimes quarterly, to say, hey, you're slipping, put more money in, or sometimes you look at it and go, I should take money out of that account and move it to an account that is interest bearing.
Anybody have questions or comments? Councilor McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Could you just explain it again why you want to have this service? I wasn't quite sure on that.
Sure. So typically in the spring, especially around the time of motor vehicles, tax collector's office get behind because the number of bills, it's not a lot of money, but it's a lot of process, and it all comes in at the same time. And that on top of the spring water sewer bill and the spring real estate bill, we have a mail backup that sometimes is quite lengthy. And then that delay in us processing is exacerbated by Melissa Zawatsky calling the collector's office saying, you haven't cashed my check. What are you doing over there? And then they have to research the backlog of mail. So this is just a way that we can outsource some of that work so that we work more efficiently to the extent that we need it. And if we don't need it, then we'll be using it in-house. And then also this is a service that we're charged by when we use it. So in low months, we won't need to maintain the same type of balances because we won't be incurring the same kind of costs. And again, they're not hard costs, but analysis is done based on what our deposits are and literally how many checks they process on our behalf.
All right.
Okay, so what kind of a backlog are we talking about here?
In March, typically there is like a week of mail at least.
Okay.
It happens every year. It's not really new.
Okay, yeah, so
And
if
so
it happens
it's a
every year and
problem
it's
that
not
I'm-
really new.
Yeah, it's a problem I'd like to resolve because it's not a good look for us.
So I noticed by scanning through here that you've got these People's United and People's Bank. Did you have any banks that were more local?
So I did reach out to Savers, and they did not offer the service.
How about Cornerstone or Credit Union or?
So credit unions typically don't offer this service. I did not talk to Cornerstone. These two I know I've done business with them before. It's usually a large bank operation. They don't, they do it at their hub. So People's Savings Bank is local in the sense that it's in Massachusetts, is their corporate headquarters in Holyoke. People's United, it used to be Bank of New England. It's part of it's been bought out and rebranded several times. So there are branches around, but it is not local. I think it's corporated out of New Hampshire. It is where we have our payroll, though, and we do have an existing business relationship with People's United. People's Savings Bank, we have never done business in the town of Southbridge with them before because they were in the communities I've worked in the past. Literally, they had branches. We did do business with them in those communities, and I do have a knowledge of their reputation, and they did provide references. Charlton uses this service with People's Savings, so our neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
But I did reach out to, I could reach out to some others, but typically the smaller banks do not. But I did reach out to Savers specifically because we do have accounts with them, and I wanted to make sure that we maintained a relationship. I don't really like to open a whole bunch of new relationships with banks.
Right.
Because that becomes challenging. So the challenge with People's Savings is that it is a new relationship, and then for our local vendor, I did reach out to them.
Okay. And when it comes to, you mentioned getting people calling in about not having the chance to cash their checks yet.
Yeah, we do get those calls every spring.
How many calls do you usually get?
Well, I don't actually sit in the collector's office, but when they start getting calls and they can't pick up, then we get the calls because their phone's busy all day. So it was quite frequent. It's over now, but the first couple weeks of March, both years that I've been here have been challenging. And they were challenging in the other communities I worked in as well. It's the time of year and the way that the bills run.
Okay, so it's kind of standard operating procedure then.
Yeah. I have had peers who've told me that they only use the lockbox service for the motor vehicle commitment one, simply to resolve that seasonal issue. But it is a relationship that you build year round. But you can kind of control that in-house if you want to just use that for your peak times, and then say during the non-peak times we don't want to use this service, which would then affect how much money we'd have to maintain with those accounts.
So if we only used it at that peak time, how much money would we have to maintain?
Well, so they gave, we would probably have to maintain in that peak time like the $2.5 million for that 2 months, and then we could drop it down to almost nothing for the rest of the year. It's literally how much would we have earned in that period versus the cost per month. And so the volume would be highest in March, so maybe it would be $3.5 million for the month of March, and then we could drop it down to like a couple $100,000 for the rest of the year if we weren't really using the service.
And if I understand what you were saying correctly, so these people come in and basically augment what you guys do in your office already.
We send mail to a lockbox. We send mail to them. They open the mail for us. They process it with their scanners. One of these companies offers that we get one of those in-house lockbox scanners so that we can process in the same way where instead of having the scanner like you do at the grocery store, it feeds the machine with the check and the deposit all at once and creates a great big file that is then imported by the staff in large batches versus one at a time transactions. So one option is to have that option in-house and to have mail sent to the alternative location. And then the other option is just to have the mail sent to the alternative location. They process all the mail. If the mail comes in where I send in my motor vehicle payment and I forgot to include my stub, they'll send an image of the check to us and say, what do you want me to do with Melissa's check? We don't know how to apply this, and we'll either say mail it back to us or deposit it, and we'll send you an artificial slip to process against.
So then instead of people paying their excise taxes here in town hall, they'd be sending them to the bank.
Correct. Yeah, and the envelope is provided and that's how you control it. If in the mailing you provide an envelope to the lockbox service, then people return it in the lockbox, but then of course they always have the option to come in here, to mail it here, to drop it at the box. It's not that we don't want to do it, it's just an option if they want to move, and then it moves more quickly and doesn't create a backlog.
So what percentage of the payments do you think will end up going through your office versus going through the bank in any given year?
So it just depends. I mean, because it's an adjustment, in the first year, people will resist it, especially if the lockbox has an out-of-town address.
Definitely.
So that is something that you have to overcome. You can get lockbox addresses with Southbridge addresses, but you pay additional service costs for that. So the question is, do you want to pay additional service costs, or the people who elect to use the envelope will send it to the place? If they elect not to use the envelope and come in and tell me how they don't like the service, they will do that too.
Okay. Ms. Clemens.
I've got two things, but to that point, Charlton does that, because I used to say, why is the address on my dad's tax envelope, why is it going not to Charlton or whatever? So yeah, it's very interesting. But my question originally was, how many people walk in and pay it versus generally mail it at this point? And obviously it's a learning curve, more people. But I think to your necessity for something like this, I mean, everything's done in such real time now. People are looking at their accounts online and wondering why there's no check. Boy, I've got all this money. No, I don't. That $500 hasn't been deducted yet. Oh, why not? Or they find out they overdraft something because, they're living on the edge.
Because we cashed the
and
check
you didn't cash their check and they didn't, pay it. Yeah, right. They didn't bother to look carefully. So the concept makes sense as long as it works with the town's needs, in terms of money, cash flow, and having to put money in a new bank, and however that works for you. But it makes sense. The idea of it scanning through is interesting too. I think that the concept to be able to just have it all through that one system, the way you're talking about it, makes a lot of sense too. I don't know what the additional cost officially, but no, I mean, if this is something you feel, I guess my concern would be, will there ever be a cost? Will there ever be a time? Could there ever be a time, I guess if you don't keep your money up, but that it's not going to be, you're saying now, okay, this isn't going to cost us really, but I'm coming because this is a change in how we do something.
Well, it costs, it's not, I'm not writing a check. The cost comes in that we are foregoing the interest income on those funds.
Right.
So.
Right. But is there any other, can you think? Is there any other problems that could arise in using this system?
I've used it in 2 other communities, and there are, I mean, honestly, it's the change of operation that's the hardest to overcome. But I did talk about this with the assistant collector, Nee Lamb, because I needed her to want to think that this was an improvement and not something that she didn't want to take on. And so she has seen the first proposal, the one that's a little more expensive with People's Savings, the one from People's United, I told her about, but it's a little less dynamic, and it doesn't include having the internal lockbox processor in-house. But before any decision would be made, I would want to talk with the staff who's going to have to manage the exceptions. And so people, they'll get that envelope and they'll either hate it, throw it in the trash, sometimes they purposely come in and write notes on it to tell me they don't like it. And sometimes they use it for everything else, and then somehow the clerk's stuff ends up at the lockbox center, and then they have to mail it back to us. But that's why daily we have an exceptions log, and then we have to read it and respond to that.
Well, I think the processing especially of the excise tax is important because I've seen people in the office being very upset when registry is closing at a certain time and they didn't pay and now they're going to not have their license. And so, yeah, processing those checks are, thank you.
Anybody else have comments or questions?
No, they seem to have answered all my questions.
Okay. You, Mike?
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Councilor Ryan, you have anything? Okay. Did we have a motion? I think we did. Okay.
So we open.
I guess, do you have any questions there, Councilor Jevin?
No, I'm defer to the expert if she says it's a good deal and this is how we're going to get our payments and it's efficient and our taxpayers are going to be happy because they don't have to wait so long for things to be processed.
That's
I defer to the expert, so. I'm
Melissa,
good.
if for some reason we decide that it doesn't work for us, is there a way to get out of it?
Yeah, you just stop sending stuff there.
It's that simple? Okay. And the other question I have is, was there any thought about, say, splitting the excise taxes so that, say A to, I don't know, L gets it so that it's due in March, and L to Z gets it so that it's due in like October?
So,
Or something like that?
we don't really control excise billing, so that's controlled by the Department of Motor Vehicles, and all cities and towns in Massachusetts get Commitment 1, which is the March commitment.
Okay.
And the March commitment comes out, and it's everyone who's got a registered car, and then there's up to like 13 or 14 more through the
Right.
course of the year, but that's like, I bought a new car, or I registered a trailer, or something.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and I guess in that case, any further comments or questions? No? Okay. All those in favor? Councilor Marquetti.
Yes.
Ms. Shea.
Yes.
Ms. Clemens?
Yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
And myself, yes, for now.
There's always one.
Thank you very much, then, Melissa. Okay, let's see here. Item number 8, discuss and review the request from the Remillard Living Trust of 301 Dresser Hill Road to remove the property from Chapter 61 status and obtain a release from the tax lien and right of first refusal. Entertain a motion to recommend that council approve this request. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Okay. And who is this going through? Is this going through you, Mr. McCall? Or is Will on?
Well, Mr.
He's the one who
Canoyer
remembers
is
this.
there if you wish to hear from him. I don't know if you received, late in the afternoon, Mr. Canoyer did provide me with a memo relative to the Board of Assessors' decision at their April 15th meeting. Typically, when you have lands in these types, there's Chapter 61, 61A. I believe 61 is forestry, 61A is agricultural, and I'm sure Mr. Canoyer will correct me if I'm wrong, but when we get a notice, typically the town has various courses of action. You have a first right of refusal, you can waive your refusal or let it essentially expire by operation of law over a period of time. And pursuant to his memorandum, he said that the Board of Assessors had voted that we not exercise at this point in time based on the fact that this was a landlocked parcel with no access to public roadway. It's in the middle of other land owned by the property owners, and that based upon the improvements with the solar equipment, that the value of purchasing this would be rather significant. That was what he conveyed to me. I know that Mr. Canoyer's name is up there. I'm sure if you have any specific questions, he'd be happy to answer them for you.
Okay. Will, you have anything you want to say?
Yes, I do. So that's a good little summary. Just a little bit more on it, though. You may remember this parcel in 2019.
Yep.
The owner went through the same motion and removed, I believe it was 13.89 acres, and the town waived its right of first refusal. We issued a rollback tax back then on it. They developed solar, put solar on that land and on that land. I think this is the supplement to that, where they have some drainage easements, where they're not, to my knowledge, they're not putting any more solar, but there is drainage easements on it. That's why they're requesting the release of an additional, 5.466 acres. So again, the Board of Assessors voted this reason for the town to exercise its option. One thing I would like to note, though, on the agenda item, it says in the last line, entertain a motion to recommend that the council approve this request and release the tax lien and right of first refusal. I would suggest you remove that phrase, release the tax lien, because they'll still have removing all of their land from Chapter 61. They're only removing this 5.66 acres. There's still going to be some additional land that is remaining in Chapter 61. So we're not going to release the tax lien unless we receive further requests to remove additional acres. So I would remove the phrasing, release the tax lien, and just add the word waive the right of first refusal.
Okay. Well, I'm curious, reading through your memo here, I just want to clarify here. You mentioned that the appraised value of the property is 1.7 million, and that for taxation purposes in Chapter 61, it's assessed at 1.6 million. Do you mean specifically just the 5 acres that they want to take out, or the entire parcel?
No, the entire parcel. That's a summary of the entire parcel. The 5 acre.
Go ahead.
5 acres that they want to take out is included in that.
Okay, because I'm kind of curious about that, because why, if that's the case, and they did the subdivision, or they did the solar work a couple of years ago, and now they're doing this section, would this have to go through planning as a subdivision, essentially?
No, I don't.
Because they're taking little bits and pieces out at a time.
No, I don't believe it would. When they did their previous work, I think they probably wanted to include this. It's just some drainage easements around where the solar is right now.
Yeah.
And I think this is more, and I'm speculating, but conversations came up about this 5 acres 2 years ago. The owner said, we want to remove 5 more acres. I said, well, your request from your attorney didn't specify that. And they've been talking about doing this for a while, but all the work is done up there. All the work is done, all the solar is complete. As far as I see, there's no change on the property whatsoever. It's simply kind of I wouldn't say a housekeeping matter, but it's more dotting the T's and dotting the I's and crossing the T's for their financiers. So there's no substantial change. There's no real change on this.
Okay, so they're not actually planning any additional development on this 5 acres?
I don't believe so. I'm very confident they are not. I haven't seen that emphatically, but the plan they just submitted on this is the same plan when they did the original plan. It just, I don't think their attorney requested the release of these 5 acres 2 years ago. And I think they're just cleaning that up.
Okay. You? Any other questions or comments? Councilor Jovan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask that if this goes to council, that the assessor submit by tomorrow morning the exact language, the exact parcel, the amount of land that we will waive, so that it's specific to this agenda item, because this is kind of vague, that we're just going to waive it. I would want, however it is listed in their request, the map, lot, and all that, so that it's specific, Will?
Yeah.
Okay, if you could. That's all I would ask. I mean, that's...
That would make sense, and that's kind of why I was asking about whether they had subdivided. Because if I understand what Will is saying, you can't really legally define this specific 5 acres because it's part of a much larger parcel. It's never been specifically defined. Am I understanding that correctly, Will?
Yeah, it's defined in the same layout that the plan, in my mind, was 2 years ago. But here, the next one, the legal request was to remove the, 13 acres approximately, which is what we did. This removes the additional 5. I think it's all part of the original plan that they had. I will add, so yeah, I think it's just cleaning up their language. And this is all their language done by their engineers.
Will, do you have a clear plot map where you could highlight the specific 5 acres that we're referring to here? Because we don't have it in our packet. That you could provide for the council meeting?
On March 26th, they notified by certified mail the Board of Assessors, the Town Council, the Conservation Commission, and the Planning Board, along with the State Forester and the local State Forester office. On that was a letter from attorneys requesting it. There was one of our GIS maps, and it was an unrecorded engineering map, which was included to all parties.
Okay, so we do have it somewhere on file because it's not in our packets.
I'm sure the manager's office has that and it could get it to you as well. They received the same documents that the Board of Assessors received.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
question. The map that's in our packet that showed, this map here, Will, can you see this?
I just see a blank piece of paper. I see a white piece of paper.
No?
Is it the one that is at the bottom of it, says Jerry Oldbright, PLS?
ZPT Energy Solutions on the right-hand corner.
Yeah, that's the one we received, yes.
Okay, right. So there's shaded area that says easement, drainage easement, and there are acreages listed, like 2.46 and 1.59. Is that, because the original, I think, is that center, previously removed, the land area previously removed, if I'm reading this correctly, which was 13.882 acres. Now they're showing this vegetation management easement of 1.349 or something, and then below that it shows drainage easement of 2. Can't barely read it, something acres. So I guess my question is it the shaded areas that are now making up 5 acres? Is that what?
Yes.
Which means right, so it sounds like they needed these, the vegetation management, the drainage easement area, they needed more than what they had probably for the solar, for the 13 acres that was solar? Is that what you're?
No, through the chairman.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the map from 2019 as well. It had all of the central area, it had the highlighted areas that you just pointed out. It had all highlighted areas that you just pointed out. But on that map, the attorneys requested to remove 13.9 acres, or whatever I said, 13 point something acres.
Right.
And I think the attorney at that time didn't tally it up correctly. So it's the part you're showing with the shaded area is shaded in the 2019 plan as well, but I don't think the attorney who wrote the request included the 5 acres and the 13 acres. I think he should have back then.
Okay.
I think that's where the confusion is. So now they're submitting the shaded areas because again, and I think they just emphatically want to get the document which will show that they paid their penalty tax on it and it's been released.
Okay, so so if I understand you properly, and I did find it in my original packet. I was actually looking at the new stuff that was sent over tonight, so I did find what you were referring to. So just to clarify then, if I'm hearing you properly and reading this properly, this land has been used in violation of Chapter 61 for the last 3 years.
You could make that contention. I think they just made a mistake on their original filing. I can tell you, not for the last 5 years, in the last year. That's when they started the development on it. And I'll be honest with you, with the land that they needed for their solar, I've already been valuing this one at its full value, about $50,000 an acre for that acreage because I see solar on it, so I valued it.
Right, yeah, I get that.
At a commercial rate.
Okay, has this actually gone through conservation yet? I know you said that was sent to them, but have they, because I think the law requires them to vote on it, then the council votes on it, if I'm not mistaken. I know we have the ultimate authority over it, but I think they have to vote to recommend one way or the other, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, and I know this is something that Maureen has not mentioned to me, so I wasn't aware of it until it came to us.
So I don't know if that's the case. I have to be honest with you. We received this on, I don't know, March 26th. There was not time to put it on the agenda for our April 1st meeting, so we put it on last week's agenda. We discussed it, and when the agendas went out for the subcommittee meetings, I saw that on there. That's why I wrote this memo today. I'm not going to say last minute, but it was, a little tighter timeline than I usually do. I just knew it was on the agenda tonight, so I put it. That's why I wrote this memo. I'm not sure if they have to vote on it or not. Even the council doesn't have to vote on this. If you do nothing in 120 days, that option will expire.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if the Board of Assessors have to vote on it. We do, because it's part of what we do.
Right.
But if we didn't send you a recommendation, I don't think that would have been material.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCall.
I blew up the drawing that Ms. Clements had held up. Each one of those segments has a square footage and an acreage associated with it. So if you add up the vegetation area, the drainage easement and the utility easement, those are 1.349 acres, 2.636 acres, and 1.481 acres respectively. They total 5.466 acres.
Okay.
So all three of those total up to the 5.
That's a good guess.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Look at that.
Any further questions or comments? Mr. McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Looking at Chapter 61, what I found was that these are long-term forest land management areas, and there's a withdrawal. There's a penalty for withdrawing early. Payment is the difference between taxes paid and taxes deferred. And in this paper that you sent, you've indicated some kind of rollback tax. So I'm going to presume that that's what that is, the rollback tax. The difference between taxes paid and taxes deferred, correct?
Through the chair, yeah, that's exactly correct.
And that would be plus interest?
I'd have to look on it. I'm not sure because they read, it's very probable, but I'd have to look. In some cases there is, some cases there isn't. We're not talking about a huge amount of money though, I can tell you that. That land is backland, no frontage. The difference, I'm not going to speculate on the amount, but it's not a large sum in the rollback tax.
All right, thank you.
Because
That's
there's
all
no
right.
frontage to the land, it's all rear land.
Right.
Well, thank you. To Mr. Canoyer's comment about you can just let things go in the 120 days, but in the past what's happened is, obviously in this case, it probably doesn't affect them that much because it's established in there and it's a non-road, it's not like it's a piece of property that we're holding up a sale of that's, but on the other hand, if you know, if the town knows it's not going to purchase this 5 acres, it's, why hold people up from moving forward with whether it's their legal or whatever. Sometimes it makes sense because you're looking for the money to purchase land because it would make sense for the community to own. Other times it's just like you said, you don't have to do it. It will just expire in 120 days. However, why drag feet and leave something dangling for 120 days if it doesn't need to be? So, but just for those who maybe aren't familiar with that. Can you tell us, the property now is at $50,000 an acre, Mr. Canoyer, because of the solar that's on it?
Yeah, not the whole property is 50,000 an acre, but the main value of solar, it requires approximately 5 acres of land to site a megawatt of solar panels. And so 1 megawatt is the land portion of the value in taxation is $250,000. So 5 acres, 250, 1 acre, 50,000. Each acre can produce about 200 kilowatts of electricity.
And as it was before, as just the vacant farmland, the value per acre, do you know offhand? Or
Yeah, it wasn't farmland, it was woodland. So it was,
forested land?
yeah, so forestry, large pieces of land are on a scale. If there's land along a road with frontage, they're a buildable lot. And then the rear land is valued at $5,000 an acre for the next 5 acres. And then it's $3,000 for the next 20 acres after that. And then it drops to $2,000 an acre on any land over those 20. So, and that's been derived from the market based on actual sales of parcels.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Councilor Ryan, do you have anything? So I can't see you at the moment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, I guess we take a vote on this one. And all those in favor, Councilor Marchetti?
Yes.
Let me clarify first of all. So we're voting on refusing or waiving our right to refusal, right of first refusal.
First refusal, yep.
And I'll accept as a friendly amendment what Councilor Jovan asked for, to get the exact language, parcel, acreage, map, and lot for
That's fine.
the council meeting itself. So we have that stuff in our packet. I think it's kind of defined in this map here, but it definitely needs to be clarified just so that we know exactly what we're voting on.
Well, Mr. Chair, we hadn't put a motion out. We had only opened it for discussion anyway. It was entertain a motion to recommend.
Well, that's
So
right.
you could certainly make the motion appropriate, the appropriate motion if you need to.
There was no motion made on that?
No, well, it was to entertain a motion.
Yeah.
So it was to open it up and entertain a motion, but you could make a motion specific to that if you choose, to making sure it's correct, is all.
Yeah. Okay.
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 Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're doing then? We're making a motion to strike?
So we're voting on a motion to recommend or I guess I'll accept a motion to recommend that the council waive the right of first refusal on these 5 point whatever they are acres, provided that we get the exact language, parcel, acreage, map, and lot details from the assessor. Does that make sense?
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. So, yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman?
Go ahead, Will.
Would you like to give you that information right now so you can make the motion on the correct?
Yeah, that sounds good.
If you just send it to, I guess you can give it to us now. Make it simple.
Okay. How about vote to recommend to town council that the council waive its right of first refusal for 5.466 acres contained in parcel 026.
Hold on. 026. Okay, 026-1?
003
003
dash A
dash A
dash 401.
40001. Okay, so it's parcel 026-003-A-401.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. Okay, so waive the right of first refusal on 5.466 acres on parcel, that number there, as defined by the map produced by Jerry Foldrake. Is that what it is? I can barely read it. Produced by ZPT Energy Solutions on whatever date this is. I can't even read it.
I think you're getting way too complicated. How about just
Because I want to
waive the parcel of 5.66 as identified in
Okay.
assessor's map. I'll make sure he has this correct
From the
assessor's
Remillard
map.
Living Trust, 301 Dresser
Yeah.
Hill Road.
And that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. As identified by the Remillard,
He does have the
Living
parcel number.
Living Trust map by ZPT Energy, so that we
All
know.
right,
Because
so
I just want to
moved.
make it clear because I want to make it clear that we don't accidentally take the entire parcel
Right,
out of
no.
61. That's what I'm trying to.
I'll just make sure for council meeting that we
Right.
have it correct with Will, that it's
Okay.
identified right.
Okay.
I think everybody knows the intent, what's going to go to council.
Yes,
So we'll just
exactly.
make sure that we have the correct parcel identified.
Okay.
In the appropriate language for the council meeting.
That works. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor, Councilor Clements, or Ms. Clements?
Yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
Councilor Marquetti?
Yes.
Ms. Shea?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see here. Okay, item number 9, discuss and review the commercial lease agreement between the town of Southbridge and Harrington Memorial Hospital for approximately 6,490 acres of office space at 153 Chestnut Street, Southbridge, for the lease amount of $2,704.16 per month, terminating with a 30-day written notice as agreed within the terms of the lease. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Ryan gives the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Shea, thank you. Okay, is this through you, Mr. McCall?
Yes. So as you may know, I participate regularly with the EDC meetings and the EOC meetings, and I talk with Ed Moore at Harrington Hospital as well as Harry Lemieux. Earlier this spring, they came forward and said they may be able to provide rent for the usage of the community center.
Okay.
I don't think, in the spirit of cooperation, people were thinking about things like rent and utilities in the early stages of this. I think we all, in the spirit of cooperation, they asked, this was already identified in the plan that the town had put together that was in place before I got here. But as people here in Southbridge, unlike many other communities, saw this coming down the pike, quickly put together this operation, and Harrington volunteered, we put everything together. So as this got up and running and things started changing, they broached the subject during one of the meetings that they thought that they could come forward and provide us some rent for using the space, because we do, in normal times, we would be using that for some other type of things, including our election. So it's an accommodation. They provide us with a fairly standard commercial lease. I did talk with Will Canoyer relative to what the going rate for that type of commercial space would be in the area. I looked at a few. I think, I can't think of the something Star. Will know the name of it. But there's online, essentially, directories where you can look up commercial space and what the value is. In fairness to them, it isn't at the high end, but they essentially didn't really have to come forward and do this because we never really talked about it. We were doing it. So it is within the range of acceptable rents for something of that nature. It's more than we're getting for some other properties in the town that we lease. As you inquired earlier, it does not have a provision for utilities in any other situation. We talked about it, Will and I would have fought for those, but where we anticipate that we'll be getting reimbursement, given the fact that they had offered to do this, I didn't push that particular issue here.
Okay. I did happen to notice in section 5, it says the lessee shall be responsible for any and all costs associated with housekeeping, cable, internet, phone, and IT services. Which is good, because I know Pat has raised concerns about, sometimes about the cleanliness of certain parts of the facility and people not following up on stuff like that, so.
And to date, even before this, when they wanted to improve their internet access and other things, including upgrading, I think, some of the electrical boxes, they said they would take care of it. So.
Okay, that's cool. Excellent. Any questions or comments? Councilor Ryan, you have anything? No. Okay.
I do not, Mr. Chair.
And just to clarify for the public record that the lease is going to be backdated to February 1st.
Correct.
Okay. Is there? I know it doesn't have an end date. Is there any rough estimate of what the end date might be? I mean, who knows how long this is going to go on, but.
I know in our meetings we've talked about this going through the summer, and that's why we're moving the polling location.
Right.
It just really depends upon what goes on at a national level and how many people I know we're doing reasonably well here in the Commonwealth. But as long as there's a need, I think they'll keep going.
Okay. I see Paul's got his hand up. You have something you want to say there, Chief?
Yeah, Chief, yeah, that's me. Sorry about that. Yeah, the expected length of time that we're going to keep this open from the CDC and the information that I have received and spoken with Harrington for is looking at right now the end of September. But obviously these variants and maybe a redose of one of these medications in the fall. So I'm really truly not sure where we're at. I'm hoping that the DPH and CDC will have a separate plan moving forward with the third dosing. But obviously it's a stay tuned for any further information, and we'll try to push that information out.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Anybody else have comments or questions? No? Okay. All those in favor? Councilor Marchetti?
Yes.
Ms. Shea?
Absolutely, yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Clements?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you for negotiating this, Mr. McCall. It was a good idea. Let's see, where are we? I'm going to start scrolling where it should be again. Okay. Let's see. Discuss and revisit the USDA Rural Development Program's Community Facilities Disaster Funds, providing 35% of capital purchases made prior to June 2021 to eligible communities per USDA requirements, blah, 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 with a secured amount of $115,847.81 of grant funds for our community, and consider approving the town apply for the grant to fund proposed capital purchases as described in the attached document. So I know we talked about this at GenGov a while back. It went back up to council. Council sent it back down again. And I know that there was some dispute over whether we should be doing this now because of capital coming up later this week, actually, or next week. Next week, actually. And some of the other concerns raised about which items were specifically on the list, which should be on the list, what other options there might be. So are there any concerns or questions? Councilor Jovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to thank the council for referring this back down to the general government. I am aware of the fact that we talk about that we don't have our capital budget passed yet, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that the council approves a 6-year capital improvement program that lays out certain items that I believe that are brought forward to the council on thoughts on what may be coming up in capital and capital needs. Given the time-sensitive nature of this, because the funds have to be expended by a certain date, I think it would be wise of us to take this again and take another look at it and see what the departments have come up with. And I think in my thought process is when I looked at that capital plan, I look at it as a 2-year type of window, because I look at fiscal year 21, of which we're using capital, our free cash out of this fiscal year's free cash to fund capital, and the fact that we're moving into the next fiscal year starting July 1. And then I also look at, and working with the department heads, look at the length of time that it takes when you order this equipment for it to actually come on board. So we could take a look at, we approved an ambulance almost over a year ago that has not been delivered as of yet, and that's through no fault of the fire department, but that is just a fact. And we delayed that expenditure 1 year
at least
from the previous budget cycle.
Yeah.
So when I take a look at it, my thought as a counselor is we do know that these departments, while we don't like spending a lot of money and we want to be conservative, the departments, in order to deliver the services that they need the appropriate equipment. And this equipment ages, and we have to plan accordingly to make sure that we provide the resources for them to carry out their mission. So I'm glad that the council will relook at this, because and I know we've had a conversation, I've had conversations with other councilors, because I look at it, if you know over that 2-year window of time that you're going to have to buy this equipment, and there's an opportunity, regardless if it's 35% or 75%, that's funded by the federal government, that is a savings to the town of Southbridge. And I always look at it, we always talk about roads and improvement on roads, and that's what I hear out there every day, even though we have a pretty well-presented, excellent pavement management plan that's coming up, that we know the bids are going to start coming in for that. I look at it as if I know, or I know as a council that over 2 years, we're gonna have to buy this equipment one way or another, rather than paying 100% of the cost. If we get 35%, and looking at some of the numbers from here, if we're able to save $200,000, I look at that as 2 streets that we may be able to fix on capital money that we will be able to save and utilize somewhere else. Or we take that $200,000 and we throw it into the stabilization account. But you're saving the taxpayers $200,000, even though because you know over that period of time, you're gonna have to buy this equipment. Somewhere down the road, we're gonna buy it over the next 2 years, so let's do it and save the taxpayers money in the long run and utilize that money for something else. So I did have some concerns with the previous list, especially the forestry truck, because I look at use and that, but if you look at this, again, I think in this paperwork, and I'll let the department heads and the town manager talk, but if you look at an ambulance, if we know that that ambulance has to be replaced, and that is a revenue generator, and we know already that it's taken over a year for us to get one back, by the time we order this and get it delivered, we're talking another year out.
Right.
And those are vital pieces of equipment that our department needs. So thank you for the time, but I look forward to the additional information, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for entertaining this coming back to your subcommittee.
No problem. Okay. I guess I'll go to you, Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe this evening we have Ms. Dean here.
Yes, sir.
I think one of the things that was taken into consideration, as you know, there was one set of options forwarded previously. There's been some other offerings that have been looked at. When I say offerings, or a list of requests, and I believe she's prepared to go over and explain those to you in the rationale.
Okay. Peg, are you up there?
Thank you. Okay. So I'm not sure how large of an image that is for you, but that is the one of the spreadsheets I may have included in the supporting documentation. What we heard from the counselors was please allow for options. And so going back to the department heads, they all brought additional items and or different items to the table. And so you'll see from Heather, I don't want to speak on behalf of any of you, but you'll see the different departments. You've got the DPW here with the truck that was originally asked for. And then this second one, the number 10 replacement board spreader, that is a new addition. Then you have the police department, the 2 interceptors, that has not changed. And then you have the fire department, you have no longer have the brush truck, you now have the ambulance. And this fire pumper was a sort of a last minute addition. What we've been told by the USDA when turning back to them, we asked one, can we be considered for more than 35%? And it was a solid no, there's no exception. And then also, what eligibility do we have for additional funding of more than what we have originally been told by them? Unfortunately, they've said you can assume that there is at least $115,000 to $130,000 there held for you if you decided to go forward. You are welcome to apply for more, for additional, but at this point, because they are trying to spend that money down, they have also been grooming other towns, and so they're working with other entities and tribes, actually, to try to get them to up the front. So they said, we're welcome to apply for more, but that they can't be sure those funds will be there. And I will leave it to you how you want to proceed.
Okay. Do what I want to do here. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, in fact,
Go ahead.
through you to Peg. Again, so what was the max that we're, right now they're allowing us to, but we can put in for more. So what is the max they think that we would be able to get?
We were told that we would likely get that 130,000 when we started moving items around. So for instance, if we, okay, so, you know, say we took out the pumper, oh, back to, actually, here we go. This request here was 215, this request here, right here. So this one, we go back to, was after the original town council meeting where it went back to Gen Gov, we took out the fire brush truck. We added in a DPW truck. And we presented that to the USDA, whether they thought that would likely get funded. They said yes. So you can see these amounts here, the 131 grant amount, and then 244 from the town. So they said yes to that. Then we started to shoot for the moon and added in, here we added in the ambulance. And so then it jumped this grant amount to 214. Then this final one is this, I think, is actually the total they actually have available for all towns. And so I don't think that would likely get funded in that total. So again, the 131 was what we were told by USDA is likely to be funded.
That was your okay. Mr. Chair. Go ahead, Denise.
And there's no harm, and again, there's no harm in us trying to apply for more, should the other towns not be able to come through.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm a little confused.
Yeah, me too.
I guess with the paperwork. Oh, wait a minute, I see this. You know what? I'm not so confused.
Can you speak into the mic?
Sorry, yeah, I usually do, huh? It's not
Yeah.
a problem. So the 131,808? Is that what you're saying that you can expect?
Correct. Correct.
So the ambulance, I'm still trying to figure out.
Yeah, so to clarify, I think I see where you're going there.
You see, I'm looking at this paperwork, and I was very confused as to, because it said grant was 214,
Right.
and now we flip pages, and it's different, so
So just to clarify, Peg, to follow up on what you were saying, I think I understand what you're trying to say is that, so we have definite commitment from USDA for the 131,808, but we don't have clear commitment for the 214,352?
Correct. And then, if you use that ballpark figure of 115 to 115 to 130, and you were to change your numbers around, right? So say you were to go for the Ford, the small Ford, and the ambulance, then you're back down around probably, that same similar match, right? So I figured if we have the spreadsheet here and you wanted us to move numbers around based on what might be more of a priority for this body, we could do that tonight.
Okay.
I don't think I'm still clear. So no ambulance on this list?
Unless we were to take something else off of the
Right,
because it looks like we're working off of the 131,808 list, if I understand correctly. So if we...
Can you speak into the mic, as I can
I'm sorry.
barely hear you.
I said, to me, if I understood what Peg was saying correctly, that we're actually working off, that the one that we're actually working off of is the one where the grant amount is 131,808. If we wanted to do the ambulance, we would have to take something else off of that list and replace it with the ambulance, if I understand that correctly. I mean, the ambulance is 235,842, which would come pretty close to eliminating everything in the DPW box.
Mm-hmm. So I say it again, you're not putting in for an ambulance.
Yeah.
I just want to get a, I don't get a yes from
them.
I'm not from the Mr. Chair, but I'm just making sure we're not putting in at this time for an ambulance. Can you hear me?
So forgive me. So I've made it clear to the USDA that this body and the town council is interested in voting on a menu of potential capital items, and what is the maximum match at this point that they can assure us of. They said the 115, 130 that we had initially presented, and so however you want to come up with that percentage, right? The 35% equals 115, 130. Based on what your priorities are, or the department's priorities are, is up to the town.
I understand that. I guess I was just still trying to figure out what we're voting on, you know.
Yeah, you and me both.
I keep asking the same question. So
Is it?
I don't know who I'm supposed to ask. Maybe I ask the chair of the council. Did the council decide then yet, or are we supposed to put forward what the recommendation is here? Because all I'm asking is, there's no ambulance, then that's the plan.
That wasn't on the original.
I'll defer to the town manager.
I understand we only have 131, and I see how it breaks up, so I'm just clarifying that, it's a simple question.
If my perspective from the council was that for it to come back to say, hey, let's not just outright not take opportunity here to get some funding. We do know that these items are on a capital list somewhere, so let's kick it back, and if people have a heartburn on the forestry truck, what other things can we develop that were on that capital improvement plan, that 6-year plan, and kick it out? And so they just came in with some recommendations. Hey, I think their recommendations are, this is some of the ways we can get to those dollar amounts. Right. You tell us what you think you want to prioritize based on the 6-year plan.
Right.
And I think it was very clear where a couple councilors stated that they were for buying 2 police cruisers because we need them. Mm-hmm. So, and then the other stuff was, but a 1994 DPW truck, I think we got our money's worth out of it.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to replace. And I know you're not arguing with me.
I'm not questioning which pieces. I'm asking which pieces. But I believe I understand it. It's just that, because that's not in the motion. The motion just says, put in to, so we can secure the amount of 115 in grant funds. I was just saying, in the documents we received to go over, there were revised dates, and I was just making sure.
And revised totals.
There was the revised totals and revised dates, so what, okay, put in, but there's nothing attached to that, to this motion, like recommend the council go with anything. So you don't want
with this option list or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying it doesn't.
Well, we can define that. That's why it's down here.
I don't care if we do or don't. It's up to the. In the end, it's up to the council.
Right.
I just wanted to know for sure what we were looking at, because I thought originally we were looking at the whole thing. I probably was not at that Gen Gov meeting whenever this originally came through. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I think I was out probably or something, because I don't recall seeing this paperwork originally. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to make sure that I understood what it was tonight. I thought we were.
Actually, did this go to Gen Gov originally, or did it just go straight to the council?
No, it came to us,
that
because
one-
we talked about the brush truck.
Right, okay.
Yes, because the
'Cause it
brush
was-
truck was brushed off my brain.
It was a tie vote, and my comment was it
that's
still
right.
needs to go to council
That's right.
because
Yeah. Okay.
regardless of whether it doesn't just die in subcommittee, it has the right
Oh, yeah, well, it
to go to
shouldn't,
subcommittee.
yeah. No, I have no problem with it. I think it's great, it's awesome, it's wonderful. I just wanted to make sure I understood what it was they were applying for.
Well,
Totally.
I know the town manager wants to address it, but I think the intent was, one, does the council want to support a submission of this grant and get 35%?
Right.
I think it's foolish to leave 35%. There was a lot of dialogue. Well, if it was 75%, I'd vote for it all day long. 75%, 35%, you're still saving the town of Southbridge a substantial amount of money. So I think the first step was, is there a will to send this back to council, whatever the configuration of equipment is that we want to pursue, is there a will to do this, and then get further recommendations?
The only point I would make is, I wouldn't take something at 35% savings if it wasn't something you didn't need to begin with.
Sure.
And if you have so you can argue that, well, you should save 35%, but if it's 35% of something, of 100,000 I didn't need to spend, then why, it doesn't help me. So all I'm, and if it's a 5-year plan that truck was at the 5th year, and, that's all. So I was just trying to figure out exactly what we were looking at approving or recommending this evening, that's all.
Right.
Thank you, though, for explaining better.
I think, first of all, to you, Mr. McCall, you had your hand up, so.
So I was directly involved in the first tally of things. We did have some conversations. I did work with this team.
Can Mr. McCall speak into the mic? I can't hear him.
Thank you.
To it. So the takeaway the other week was that the brush truck was probably a non-starter. At least that was what some of us on staff talked about. So the items that were originally selected came off of the capital requests that came in from various department heads. And the numbers that you still see there are items that people have as future capital requests. These other vehicles, I know the chief has talked about the other ambulance. So the motion that is on the agenda, or the agenda item itself, appears to be the exact same one you had before. So I think it gives you the leeway based on the amount, the dollar range that Ms. Dean has said that the USDA feels confident in giving to the town if it wants to apply, is up to approximately $130,000. $100,000. So that's one of the permutations that she has listed there with the 2 dump trucks. Given that we may need the additional ambulance, there's also the alternative version. That doesn't, in my mind, preclude you from moving things around, as Ms. Clemens, I think, alluded to, as well as Councilor Jovan. The key is you've got to keep it under the 130,000 if you want to ensure that we're going to get the 35% back. What kind of boxes you in is, from my review of what we've done in the past, is we typically get the 2 interceptors every year because of the amount of wear and tear on these vehicles, and that seemed at the time, and maybe still seems something that is of need, and so that's why that's been left on there. It's really up to the council. We've advanced what we believe are needs. We're trying to move them around. You're kind of looking for the Goldilocks, the just right version of this. We have one that's a little high, we have one that's a little low, we have one that's right about where they'll say they'll accept it. The question is what's on that list that we're submitting acceptable to the subcommittee and council? Right. And I would submit, I know Councilor Ryan went down to DPW, we have quite a few old vehicles, they're ones that are all on there, the list for replacement down the road. I know the chief of police and the fire chief have vehicles that are on the list going down the road. We're just trying to capitalize, as Councilor Jovan said, on the availability of this potential grant. Those numbers can fluctuate year over year. The grant, as long as we're designated a rural community, my understanding, and speaking with representatives from them, is we could do this in future years, but the money that is there in the pool may fluctuate. So, they can only guarantee us so much at this point in time for the match.
I liked the brush truck.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Ryan.
Okay, I've had my hand up for a while. I'm getting tired. I wanted to ask about, could you, Peg, could you pull up the,
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
cost of what it would be for, grant, match for the police cruisers and the ambulance? I wanted to know if we put those as our proposals, what the cost for the match, what would the match would be?
Over 2, 3, 5.
And I guess the reason I'm going down this way is we've heard a lot of conversation about police cruisers and ambulances. If we can get those 2 items, those group of items as the money that can be for the grant, then let's do it. So it'd be 120, Peg?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, that's something I personally, I value all the departments. I am trying to look here at what's going to be needed. And going into the capital season, I'm not going to say, and I know Heather's excluded from this, but going into the capital season, I'm going to keep you in mind, Heather, as we go through the capital budget and making sure you get the items you need and that. But coming to the grant, I really think using it for ambulance and the police cruisers might be something that would be for the best. If you guys want to discuss that.
Councilor Steves, may I make a comment? So I don't know if this is going to convolute the conversation in any way, but when I was on the phone with the USDA, they also indicated there will be, as the town manager said, future funding. This one's going to be related to COVID, and it's going to be available. The note has not been published. It'll be published after July. And so when they saw the most recent spreadsheet that I sent along, where they said we can't guarantee these funds, they said you might be well served to wait and ask for the ambulance when you see that new notebook come through. because it's directly COVID related.
Okay.
And so I would hate to discourage you from funding an ambulance to say it could be funded in the future and then not get that through the USDA, but I also feel like just for information sharing to be able to consider all avenues, they indicated that could probably be funded through the COVID.
Okay. Makes sense.
Money that's available.
That makes sense.
Would it be a full 100% reimbursement?
No, same model as this.
So it'd be a 35% reimbursement, but with another grant later down the line?
Correct. And they said they will market to us, they'll make sure they reach out to us and allow us to be able to be considered once that NOVA comes out.
Okay, well, that makes me feel more comfortable with the revised request then. If we're going to be getting the ambulance funded by another, I didn't know that, so, okay.
That's a good idea. Following up with that, I guess through you to the manager, or through me to the manager. I don't know if, would it be possible to get COVID reimbursement for replacing the cruisers? Since they're also involved in COVID responses? Or maybe partial reimbursement anyway?
I can't speak to some of the other expenses. There are certain things that we've been eligible to submit for reimbursements under the CARES Act and through FEMA. This is the USDA grant that's specific, and I spoke to them this evening about some other issues, but they said if it's tied to COVID, that you can submit this for the 35%. So they said police, fire, most of your EMS services, including DPW. So yes, police is, and that's why it's included here.
I was actually thinking more in terms of the more general COVID reimbursement that we've been getting from FEMA and whoever. Would it be possible to get that kind of stuff reimbursed? Because they've been giving us 75 to 100% reimbursement. You don't think so, Jack?
I think there's a distinction between those types. This is for capital. This is their capital facilities loan and grant program, so it's capital items. Some of those other ones, I'm sure Ms. Harnois has more knowledge about it, but oftentimes those are expenses that are directly related to the response. We've been submitting cleaning, PPE, a variety of different things of that nature, but not capital items. So I don't know that we could do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure the chief will probably follow up, because I did have a conversation with the chief about possibility of funding the ambulance on a reimbursement type, 100% reimbursement, but that was not allowed, so he may be able to echo that, but we had that conversation already about trying to do that as well.
Okay, good to know. Karen, go ahead. Oh, before you do, hold on a second, before you do, Peg, could you stop sharing your screen so we can see everybody? Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Yes, thank you. I was on a remote this afternoon with the MMA, and they were discussing some of the new funds that are available, and they call it under the which is the new funding, and it did talk about COVID-related vehicles, such as the ambulances. I'm not sure if what percentage it could be used for, but I believe that is coming up. We just don't have a lot of details about it yet.
Okay, good to know. I see Paul's hands up, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a local town on the South Shore put in for an ambulance reimbursement through the CARES program. That ambulance was approved through CARES at 100%, just like our stretchers were, but that ambulance is only used for COVID-19 patients. They can use it after this is all said and done, but to get one of those passed through the FEMA board now would be very, very difficult. I do know the fire chief personally, and he said it took him many, many hours to push it through. And it is separated from, that vehicle is separated from their fleet because it needs to remain clean and sanitized and can only be used for those COVID-19 patients. We don't have that luxury here in Southbridge. All three of our ambulances are the same, and they all go out. We don't know when there's a COVID patient at home. So when we do get in contact with one, the vehicle comes back and gets sanitized and ready to go. So It's interesting that Ms. Harnois has brought that other information to the table. I will be glad to be looking at that with her, and we'll move forward with that discussion.
Okay, thank you. That was interesting. Jackie, go ahead.
I'll let Heather go first, because Heather's had a hand up while too.
Okay.
I would just like to speak on the vehicle.
You're distorting there, Heather.
Excuse me. You need to actually have the entire year for the bill to be removed whenever you make decide
Heather, hold on. I can't understand. I don't think anybody can understand a word you're saying. You're completely distorted. Could you like try logging back in maybe? Because I know I didn't understand a word.
Not a word. She probably has charter.
What's that again?
I said she probably has charter.
Well, so do I.
At our house.
Yeah. Okay, while she's trying to log back in, you want to say what you were going to say there, Jackie?
Yes, Mr. Chair, sure. I was going to actually peg on the revised, what's the number, 131, 132?
131,808.22, and that was one of your spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Perfect, okay.
Yeah, we've got
It shows just the DPW and police.
So, I would make a motion that we would support that grant going up to the full council.
Are we all going to have a chance to talk on this first?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just making a motion, that's all I'm
Okay,
doing.
well, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second, thank you. Okay.
More discussion.
Okay, and I see Heather has hopefully come back. I thought I saw her a second ago. And there she is. Okay,
Can
cool.
you hear me now?
That's much better, yes, thank you.
Sometimes just rejoining, I guess. So I just wanted, did I freeze? I just wanted to state that the first unit that you saw in there was on last year's capital plan and was slated to be approved when COVID hit and when we determined that everything needed to be moved to the stabilization that we had, any of the free cash that we had. So, this is now the second year that this truck is going up to be slated, and that was part of the reason why I brought it forward. It was actually on the previous year's capital plan, and we didn't get any trucks last year to replace. I know Jackie has taken a ride in this vehicle. This vehicle probably will not pass inspection just because the electrical in it is so badly fried at this point that we can't have the horn working. It's going to get to the point at this, we're not going to have vehicles too plowed and too solid. So I just want to bring it up. I understand it's making a decision on what we need to prioritize here, but at some point we won't have operational DPW vehicles to actually even do anything with if we keep going.
Okay, and just to clarify, you're referring to the F-450?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have other questions or comments? Councilor Marchetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. There's a whole lot of different things, different numbers being thrown out here, different vehicles. So I was just trying to make some notes and see exactly what we're doing here tonight, because the original agenda item, or the agenda item itself says 115,847. Now we're talking about 131,808. The revised grant that was presented here tonight, we were talking about buying an ambulance, adding a truck, and the 2 police interceptors.
Yep.
So I was just trying to figure out which one are we doing for. That's the first question that I had. Which plan are we going here? Are we going the one with the small dump truck at the DPW and adding a snowplow from the original? since the original, taking out the brush truck and not adding an ambulance and adding the 2 police, what they're called interceptors. That's the one we're doing here tonight now?
That's what it looks like, yeah.
I believe that's what
So
Council
that's the
Ryan motioned.
revised,
Okay.
excluding the fire brush truck and adding a DPW dump truck, correct?
If I'm reading this properly, it's the Ford F-50, the replacing the 6-wheel dump truck with plow, which is 185, two cruisers, the grand total being 376,594.90. Am I on the same page that everybody else is?
Yeah.
It should be the second.
Second page.
Option in your packet.
The revised. And just
So,
The 244,
The date is 3/25.
32521 page.
325?
so in effect, this is actually more, we're spending more money here than the original that was sent back to this subcommittee, and we're still only getting 35%, correct? So there's nothing changed here. We're still getting 35% to purchase these vehicles. Nothing has changed on it whatsoever.
As far as, some of
That's
the
not
vehicles
accurate,
have
Mr. Chairman.
changed.
All right, explain it to me. I'm just asking. Go
The
ahead.
35% is the same. It's the message that we interpreted was the brush truck was not acceptable. So what you have is the dump truck came in instead of the brush truck. So that is what has changed, and that has changed the dollar amount. The town before would have spent $330,000 and got $115,000 back from the grant. Now it will cost $376,000 and we would get 35% back, or $131.8 thousand.
That's not what I said. I thought that's what I said. I apologize if that's not what I said.
I think the only difference was, the numbers were there, it was
It's
the
still
difference between the brush truck, I think.
It's still 35%, right? So
Yes, that
nothing
part
has
is correct.
changed on that part there.
We don't have any say over that. That's what the USDA is offering us.
Right, that's correct. And we're not sure that they're offering that, because in the agenda, it says 115. That's where this is getting jumbled here. Which one are we doing here?
Mr. Chair, if I could answer that.
Sure, thank you.
The reason the original agenda item says the 115 is because it was referred back with the original intent of that item. It doesn't mean that we can't discuss a different option at that 35%.
Okay.
So the reason that language is 115,000 is simply because that was the motion that was referred back to general government for further discussion.
I see.
So now this subcommittee then can entertain a different motion based on that feedback about changing out a certain vehicle and give us the best proposal that we think will benefit the town of Southbridge. So there's nothing underfoot here as to numbers. It's simply that main motion was referred back. Now it's here to be debated, to be referred back to council for further discussion. So that's why there's some differences in numbers.
Right.
Thank you very much. I think I still have the floor. I'm not
That was
saying-
as a point of clarification.
All right, thank you. I'm not saying anything that's underfoot. All I'm saying here is that there is absolutely no difference between the one, except for the different vehicles and the total. It's still 35%.
Yes, it is.
That
have no
we
say over
sent
that.
back because for me, I didn't think that was enough.
Okay.
I thought 75% would be something that I would absolutely support. 35% just does not, and I understand everybody's position on this. At least it's something, but for me, 75% is the sweet number as far as I'm concerned. The other
It would
question.
be nice if we were getting it, but we're not.
Well, okay. The other question I have, a few other questions I have. We buy 2 police interceptors. What happens to the old vehicles? Do they get junked? Do they get handed down to someone else?
In my experience, in other agencies, as part of my procurement, we auction them off, but typically they will work their way down through the fleet. They may become unmarked. They could be used for when officers go to a variety of different things. If they go to the academy or if they go to specialized training, they want to go in a police vehicle but not with your traditional marking. They could be used as the supervisor's vehicles. I don't know if the chief is up there. I can't see the screen, but I'm sure he would tell you the same, that They try and get every possible mile out of these things. That's what we've done in the other towns I've worked with. And at the end, when there's really nothing left to them, they'll put them up for auction, and most people will buy them for parts to fix other cruisers and other agencies, and that's typically who would buy them. Or if you still had a Crown Victoria, cab companies out of New York would come for them.
And my question is, I think I still have the floor if you don't mind.
Yeah, you do.
Okay. My question is, what happens to, well, I should be more specific. What happens to Southbridge vehicles when we buy 2 new police interceptors in Southbridge? What happens to the old vehicles?
If you don't mind, we have this conversation every year when it comes to capital, and we say, what happens with old vehicles and where does it go? And I know the chief in my tenure, not only on town council, but also on my former role on PPP, we have that conversation every single time about what you do with these older vehicles. And I know that the chief is very upfront on the fact that this cruiser is coming offline and it's going to be junked or whatever is going to be done to that. There are some cruisers that, and I know the chief can answer it, but I do know over my tenure on council, we have that conversation all the time. And I know specifically on one cruiser, we've had lots of conversations about what happens to it and it comes off the road. So I'll let the chief answer it, but I do know we try to keep account on that to make sure, because there's nothing worse, and I agree, there's nothing worse than departments that they say that we're taking it off the road and then you see it still going.
Right.
However, there's also a rotational type of thing where, and I know my previous experience as a chief, I might take that to the spare cruiser so that until it absolutely dies, I don't use it as a frontline car, but I use it as a spare, but my worst car is gone off the fleet and I get rid of it, and I'm trying to rotate to keep those vehicles going. So, and I know the chief is very transparent about that, so if you would have the chief respond, that'd be awesome.
Chief, do you have anything you'd like to say about that?
If I could, through you, Mr. Chair. So as I say, every single year, my intent is not to grow the fleet. It's not my mission. Usually when you get a police vehicle, you can call around to any department, compare apples to apples. Call a place that's just as busy as ours and has just the amount of staffing we have. Most people, chiefs, will run cars to about 50 or 60,000 miles. They'll take them out of service. They become issues, or they'll go to a detective unit, court, to a junior police officer, to an academy, just because the maintenance cost increases so dramatically after 50 or 60,000 miles, it's not worth keeping them online. But with all that said, in Southbridge, we have become accustomed to, and at no fault of anybody, we have less funding available, we'll say. So every year we get rid of cars. The 2 that I'm trying to move on from this year are Cruiser 113 and 310. They're 2013 vehicles. They have 100,000 plus miles on them, and that's about 300,000 miles on the engine. Per any police study you look at in the United States, for every 100,000 hours, or miles, sorry, equal to about 300,000 hours on the engines, because they run 24/7. These cars, to answer Councilor Marquette's question, they'll be salvaged. We usually get a couple $100 for them. There's not really any use to them. Sometimes our mechanic he's a very capable man, and he'll take the light bars out, the radios, the cages. We kind of retrofit them to the other vehicles. But this year, Ford Interceptor, Ford and Their Infinite Wisdom, has changed the body style again. So now some of the cages are a couple inches off, the light bars don't fit, but usually Ford will keep that vehicle several years, 5, 6, 7 years, the same exact vehicle, and we just retrofit equipment, but this year we won't be able to do that. So again, we'll probably get a couple $100 for our cars, we pull everything out, strip it down to nothing, take our stickers off of it, the lettering, and we either auction them or we give them to Plaza, or don't give them, Plaza comes and removes them, and he brings them to the junkyard and he scraps them, and that's all we get. So I don't know if that answers that question enough, but every year we talk about it, every year I'm very clear, very transparent. I want you to know that we're not growing the fleet. We're getting rid of 2 vehicles we can no longer drive, and we'll replace them hopefully with 2 better vehicles.
Okay, thank you. And it may have been discussed in all the years, but this is the first time that I've discussed it, so Thank you very much for answering the question. I do have one more thing. I know it's not related to this, but I do think at some point we should have a discussion on what our policy is for going for these grants, because it just seems to me we go for every single grant we can find, whether we need it or not. We go for these grants. So at some point, I would like us to have that discussion. The town council should probably create some policy on what grants we go for, and not just leave it up to somebody in some department to say, hey, I found this grant, let's go for it. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Adams.
Okay, Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I made that motion at the town council meeting to bring it back to have the department heads to reevaluate what they were actually bringing in front of us. And I think the fact that they did this, and though it was kind of confusing, if you're looking at all the paperwork, obviously there's parts of this we just can't afford at this point in time. But I do agree with taking a look at something, like you said, Councilor Marchetti, and it's not on you because I agree, take a look, just because there's a grant shouldn't be a check in the box before we move forward. But if I can get 35% off of an item that I know I have to purchase that to support the first responders, the DPW, or the town employees, then why not do it? And that way we don't have to increase our budget or our capital, utilizing our capital funds to pay for something that's we're going to get anyways. So why not get it at 65% instead of 100%? So I agree with your motion that you have on the table. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jack? Do you have to-
Thank you. While I respect Councilor Marchetti's comments, this is exactly what we're doing. The department head, it's not our job to go out and look for grants. It's a town manager's job, every department head, to go out and look for grants and then to come to the council and say, I found this grant. Council, you can debate it, you can talk about it, but I found this grant that will save the town 35%. I'll match 5%, 95 or 90% up at the airport grant from the federal government. Town pays 5. But all those grants come to the town council to say yes or no. They're not out there going grants and saying, here, I got this grant, I applied for it, here you go, here's the money, and now you got to match it. Right. They're coming to council saying, hey, before I apply for this, do you support it? Right. Does it make sense? And that's our job. Yep. So to develop a policy, just say, well, this is when, hey, Peg Dean, great job getting that CDBG grant. That young, that department person down there, that CDBG grant coordinator, well worth the amount of money that we pay her this year. The amount of money and grants that have come to the town. 35%, 75%, I don't care what it is, because in the long run, the town needs equipment, the town needs to improve, and every federal dollar that we can get, or state dollar that can help us to improve the town of Southbridge, we should be going for. And that is what these department heads are doing. They're not just saying, hey, I applied for it. Why are we spending 2 hours at your last general government meeting talking about this grant, going to council talking about another hour, and here we are another hour here debating whether we should go for a grant? We are doing our job as councilors. I don't need a policy for a department head to say, go ahead and apply for it. They're doing their job. That's what we pay them for. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Yeah, had a comment after when we all originally raised our hands, I think. Two things, and Chairman Joven, of course, you said it, I don't have to beat that one up. There is a second fail-safe as well. Not only do you approve the grant going out, you also have to accept the grant when it comes in. Yep. So should, by some oddity, something get done that council hasn't approved, then council can not accept the grant and it not get done. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. But I looked at these numbers. I think they were very confusing, as I said, just because there were 3 pages and I wasn't aware of, 115, 131. Yeah. Two things. Ms. Dean, this 131, it was indicated that you believed you would get up to that 131 potentially?
The most recent communication said we definitely have the 115.
Yep.
But they had said, back a month ago, yes, we could get the 130.
Okay.
And so my interpretation is we can still get the 130 likely. And, when presented with that large amount, asking for up to the $425,000 from them, they said, you're welcome to apply, you're not guaranteed. And so I
Right.
feel like, leaving a margin of that extra $15,000, we're safe based on them saying that that money would be there for us.
Sure. So again, you point out all these numbers, that's a potential of $131,000, which purchases a nice large vehicle or half an ambulance that we would save. And if you look at the difference between the two, the one that had the brush that's, that we end up at $115,000, it's a $46,000 difference on that number. $46,000 is getting us another plow truck. It's kind of, and if these are the pieces that we're going to the capital budget, which is coming up very soon, it really does make sense to, as Chairman Jovan had said, to take it when you can get it in this case. And that 90%, 95 up at the airport, that was an anomaly. To get that again is, I don't think in our lifetime, I've never seen something like that before. Occasionally you're lucky at a 40 match or a 40-60 or whatever, but to get anything over 40-50 is really, at least in my experience, is very rare. So I'd love all 75s and 90s.
That would be
but
nice, yeah.
I think you've done a great job. Everyone's doing a great job on this, and I look forward to being a part of that, the next set where you can get another 35 or 45 off of some more equipment that we need.
Okay.
So thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, Chief Normandy?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just, obviously, we've spent a lot of time as department heads putting a lot of these information together, and I respect everybody's opinion here tonight, but as we sit here, I just want to let you know that the 5 or 6 year capital plan, just in my department alone, has been shuffled around so many times.
Yep.
My original plan in January was to go for a $580,000 pumper to replace a 1989 engine, which is pretty much dearly needed. Then we came in with the USDA grant, and I moved the forest fire truck, like council had noticed at the previous couple of meetings. Moved the forest fire truck, which was slated to be sent up to capital in 2023. I moved that down and then moved the engine out. Now, I thought it was a good way to, and obviously I will work with Ms. Harnois on the other projects with her cares with the ambulance. I'm just going to say it, I'm doubtful that will happen. And now I have to move the capital budget again. So what I'm saying is that obviously, I'm just a little frustrated with the whole process here, and I get where you guys are at. The ambulance does generate about $300,000 a year alone. That's revenue that goes back into the general fund. But we'll keep plugging away, and obviously, hopefully at capital, we'll push the engine through, because that is dearly needed. This truck is a 1989, so it's seen its day, it's done its due, and I'll have more at the capital meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Okay. No more further comments. Okay, cool. So we do have a motion and a second on the floor. If I'm not, just to clarify, that was for the one that's the total of $376,594.90, correct, Jackie? You made the motion.
Yeah, the one that was matching for 131.8.
Right, okay. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further comments? No. Okay. Councilor Clements, or Ms. Clements?
Yes.
I said that again.
Yes, I said.
Okay. Ms. Shea?
I voted yes the last time. I'm voting yes again this time.
Okay. Councilor Marquetti?
No.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, when I submit this, it says as described in attached document. I'm just going to add attached document revised 32521 list, which will reference that, okay?
Yes, that's the one we're referring to.
And the dollar amount, so, okay.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Okay, so you may have noticed that we took item number 11 out by request of Councilor Daniels, since he can't be here tonight. So we'll throw that on the next agenda. Is there any new business?
I did have a question from a constituent, but I don't know if it should be waited. I didn't really get to talk to the town manager about it yet. Somebody was asking me about the athletic field at the Dresser Street athletic field, when we might be able to use that again. Just thought,
I didn't really hear the question, but
I'm sorry, a constituent asked me about Dresser Street, the McMahon Field, whether or not that's going to be opened to the public.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, that's not a question for general government, but he could refer it to council and Mr.
Yeah.
Town Manager afterwards and ask that
Yeah, you
question.
can.
I've had the same question, but you can refer it back, but it's not a topic for general government.
Okay.
I can probably put this to bed very quickly. There was a lengthy response by Dr. Villar, and I think it was addressed to Ms. Shea, who has her hand up earlier. I read it earlier, I couldn't parrot it back, but I do know he said he's working on getting the schools reopened. That was the gist of it, but I can work to get you a better response.
Okay, that's fine. I probably shouldn't have brought it up. I just
But Ms.
was
Shea
in my
still has her
mind,
hand.
and so I brought it up.
Martina?
I did write him the note asking him about it, and the response, yes, was to me, because I'm getting the same issues. The schools are opening completely this coming week.
Yep.
He plans on having the fields open the following week. So that'll be the 1st of May, which is, and we've had kind of an early spring, so the 1st of May is probably about right. His concern is that the high school academy uses the field, but I wrote back to him and I said that we've always had both the school and the public using the fields at the same time. We've never had any trouble. Any trouble we've had has always been late in the evening, not in the middle of the day when the school kids are there.
Right. Okay. Do you have anything else for new business? Either of you? No?
Motion to
You?
adjourn?
Jackie, do you have anything?
No?
Okay.
I'll second that motion to adjourn.
Okay. So you
Second,
made one?
whatever,
With
yes.
a second? Okay. All those in favor on adjournment? Councilor Marquetti?
Yes.
Ms. Shea?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you all for attending and for watching. Have a great night.